VikesNow. I am Dustin Baker. We are here on December 4th, entering week 14. I'm here with Josh Fry. Josh, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. We got another stressful win out of the book this weekend. Probably one that the Vikings shouldn't have pulled off, but hey, 10-2, we're not going to apologize for wins at this point in the season. Looking strong heading into December, and we finally getting some snow football now too. So that's been exciting. We've gotten two snow football games already. I feel like we only get like one of those per year, and now we've already had two of them. So it's been a fun time.
The Browns Steelers one on Thursday Night Football was so cool because it wasn't even in the forecast. It just
Yeah,
showed up and happened. I think there was supposed to be like typical flurries, but then like an hour into it, we're like, oh, we get a snow game.
yeah, exactly.
And then Jameis Winston masterclass, if only for that game, because he returned to his 500-yard passing self
Oh my
last
God.
weekend.
Well, what was that quote? Will God deliver me from these pick sixes or something like that? Just Jameis is awesome. I love Jameis.
Yeah, I hope that let's see, what is he, early 30s? Hopefully he
Yeah.
stays around as like, a top three QB2 for the next decade. He's that fun.
Yep, for sure.
All right, the first I've asked you today to rank possible round one opponents for the Vikings based on who they want to play, because we can start looking at that at 10-2. The Vikings, all they really need is one more win or another team not to win out in order to get to the postseason. But before we get this cracking, on Vikings Twitter today, from a page called Vikings Fan Page, I thought it was a rather innocent tweet that asked, "Are we going to boo Kirk Cousins or cheer for him this?" Or no, boo or not boo was basically the question. And to me, I guess I don't take sports seriously enough because I, for one, will be there and not going to boo the shit out of Kirk Cousins. Now, I will be loud and make noise when his team has the ball, but like to serenade him with like he's Sean Payton or something is not on my agenda. However, I thought that was a pretty universal take, but it is not. There are people that are going to boo the shit out of Kirk Cousins. They told me on Twitter. If you were going, sir, which camp would you live in?
So personally, I probably wouldn't boo, especially like, are we talking like during the game or are we talking like pre-game intro stuff?
Well, the thing is, during the game, like on third downs, we don't usually sit there and boo. We sit there and
Yeah,
make it loud and just
fair.
yell obnoxious things, but we don't like usually a chorus of boos is what happens like when somebody returns to a stadium hated. Like
Right,
I'm trying
yeah,
to think of a good example. Sean Payton is the one that comes to my mind. Like if he and the Broncos come to US Bank Stadium, we're going to boo him because he
definitely.
has a checkered history regarding the Vikings. But for Cousins, to me, who was the personification of kindness for 6 seasons. Like they didn't win a whole lot, but I just don't understand why you would treat him like public enemy number one.
Yeah, no, I probably wouldn't be booing him either if we're just taking it like pre-game intro consideration stuff. Like the dude was a quarterback for 6 seasons. He was a pretty good quarterback. Obviously, the tenure ended in a little bit of disappointment, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that I'd be booing personally if I were there. But I mean, at the end of the day, fans are going to be fans. There's all's fair in love and war, as they say. And I think if you're gonna treat him like a regular opponent, like a lot of Vikings fans probably are on Sunday, you're probably going to boo him. And I understand that some Vikings fans might still be hurt that he left the team. He decided to take the money rather than sticking it out and trying to go win a Super Bowl with the team that trusted him 6 years ago. So I get it from either standpoint, but personally, if I were going, I probably wouldn't boo him because I mean he was good to the Vikings for 6 years, and I obviously the winning didn't exactly happen the way that a lot of fans wanted it to, but they could have done a lot worse as well. And like you said, Kirk Cousins is pretty much the personification of kindness as a human being. Never really does anything wrong off the field in his life, and I think that I personally wouldn't be booing him this Sunday.
In the same vein, if the Vikings had played the Panthers this year, would we boo the shit out of Adam Thielen?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. And I get that's probably a little bit different because the Vikings basically discovered Thielen. He was the guy coming out of D2, and he's a Minnesota native and everything. He's got all these other storylines working with him as well. So that probably plays a little bit of part in what the difference would be between Kirk Cousins and Adam Thielen. But they're pretty much very similar caliber players too. So I mean, yeah, I get where you're coming from there.
Yeah, well, that I just don't get the like. I guess I'm speaking on some that have, beyond the shadow of a doubt, said, "Oh yeah, you boo Kirk Cousins," because Adam Thielen could have taken a pay cut. but he didn't. He
Yeah.
went and got a large contract by his age and standards on a losing team. So I don't see very much difference between what how Thielen and Cousins left. Ultimately, I'm glad they both landed on their feet and at least individually
Sure.
are playing well at times. Cousins has not in the last 3 weeks. We'll get to that. But all right, so it sounds like we're on the same page. If you want to boo, I guess great, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like the adult thing to do to me.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of it's sports. Fans are gonna be a little bit immature at times. I mean, I can't say that I'm always the perfect fan either. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you get the heat in the moment and stuff. Like, yeah, I get it. It's an emotional time for a lot of fans, so I get it either way.
Yeah, I'm gonna make life hard for him, like when
Yeah,
he has the ball. I guess it'll probably come down because I don't think that they're going to like be like, "Hey, Kirk Cousins is back, everybody. What do you think?" I think it'll be as soon as he comes under center and they're like Kirk Cousins under center, and then
that's
we'll
when.
probably either get the
Yeah.
spattering of booze or nothing or just the regular. We'll find out.
Hmm.
All right, 10-2. The Vikings are in the absolute driver's seat in a season where they were supposed to win 6 or 7 games. This guy predicted a 7-10 record. This guy was wrong. They are 10-2.
Same.
Probably looking at, gosh, 12-5 would feel like a disappointment because it'd mean that they lost the next three of the next 5 games. Probably looking at 13-4, 12-5, unless we have a junior version of a collapse. I've asked you in round one, unless we assume the Vikings catch the Lions from behind, to rank the possible opponents. And I think they can reasonably be like in order of likelihood, probably the Falcons at the very top of the list. If you think that Cousins will get his poop in a group and they hold off the Buccaneers, otherwise it would be the Buccaneers. Could also be the Cardinals, the Seahawks, the Rams if they get a little bit hot, or the 49ers if I don't know if they have to win out, maybe finish 4-1, 5-0, whatever they have to do. Feels a little grim there right now. But how do you want to start at the bottom or the top of your list?
Let's start with the easiest opponent
Okay,
first.
who is it?
That would be this weekend's opponent, the Atlanta Falcons. um, I I I feel like this is a Falcons team that a lot of people kind of thought was going to be semi like elite coming into the season. Like, oh, the only thing they really needed was a quarterback, and now they've got that in Kirk Cousins, and they're going to be just cruising in a weak NFC South and winning all these football games, going like 12-5 or something like that.
Hmm.
But it has been nothing. It has been anything but easy in Atlanta so far this season, especially the past few weeks where Kirk Cousins is throwing all these interceptions. He's now the league leader in interceptions, which, by the way, plays into a Vikings defense that currently leads the league in interceptions as well in terms of takeaways. So I think that if the Vikings go up against the Atlanta Falcons, they're probably finding a way to get a couple extra possessions in there as well. And honestly, at the end of the day, despite all the names on this roster, the Atlanta Falcons aren't really elite at anything. Like in terms of EPA overall, they're 15th in the league, passing their 14th, rushing their 15th. And then on the defensive side, they're even worse. Overall, they're 25th, passing their 25th, rushing their 22nd. Like this is about as mid of an NFL team as you're going to find. And in terms of a number one, in terms of the easiest playoff team, I think this is the one that the Vikings are absolutely circling. Like, okay, if we get this team, we can definitely win and we can move on to the divisional round.
So on Kirko, I've got to ask you because this is really fascinating. He's 36, and by my recollection, and I think even back to the Washington days, he's had 2 horrible games back to back and
Mhm.
3 not good games back to back, and they've lost 3 straight. Do you think it is more likely that he is approaching that territory of he just doesn't quite have it anymore? Or is this an anomaly of 3 bad games and he'll soon bounce back? Like what's more likely that he is on the doorstep of yeah, hasn't fully recovered from the Achilles. That's what happens when you're 36, tear your Achilles. What's more likely that he turns into decent Kirk or this is it?
I think that the last few games have definitely been a little bit of an anomaly. Like I definitely think he's better than what he's shown over the past few weeks, at least in terms of his statistical numbers. But at the end, it's just watching him play, it doesn't feel like the ball comes out of his hands the same way as it used to. Like it doesn't have that same like zip on it where he's rifling the ball into a tight coverage like all those years he was throwing to Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, you could guarantee that he was going to put that ball on the money. It doesn't seem like that's happening anymore in Atlanta, which is why he's throwing as many picks as he is, leading the league is 13. So I think that he's going to get a little bit better, but I also think that there's definitely some signs of age in his game at this point. So it's a little bit disappointing to see, but I mean, from a Viking standpoint, we'll take it. We'll take it.
I was talking to Yannick Eckhart last night about this, and it's so strange with Cousins coming back to US Bank. It feels like any scenario by him personally is possible. I won't be surprised,
Yeah.
nor will Yannick be surprised if he goes 350, 4 touchdowns, no picks, because it's weird that he's had this many bad games. It won't be weird at all if he is bad Kirk and the Vikings just confuse the hell out of him. And then it won't be weird if he's right in the middle and has like 220 yards, 2 touchdowns, or a touchdown. Like it's tough to predict how he's going to bounce back from this.
I'll push back a little bit. I'd be very shocked if he's the former option of like 300 yards, four
Yeah.
touchdowns, because this Vikings defense is that good.
Yeah.
It would be shocking for any quarterback to do that against this Vikings defense at this point, I
I
think.
think the reason we settled on Yannick and I, not discounting your take, is the two guys that have carved up the Vikings are Stafford and Goff.
Yeah.
And he kind of lives, or at least he used to, like, a month ago, he lived in that territory. So if there's anybody that would be able to get to him, it's probably somebody from that cloth of
Fair.
Stafford or Goff. But those two also haven't played like shit for 3 games during the season.
Yeah.
This will be, I will tell you what, if Cousins does not recover and our lasting memory is this whimper between him and Rodgers, we will be skittish about Achilles tears for 30 somethings for the rest of days because they
Oh
both
yeah.
are doing the Spider-Man meme at each other, at least right now.
Yeah, I fully agree, and it's a shame. At least you never want to see anybody get hurt and not really fully bounce back. But yeah, like you said, it seems like that Achilles injury really just takes a toll on you as you get a little bit older, and these teams take big chances, sign these kinds of big contracts, and now you have to deal with it. It's not fun.
And that was one of the main arguments, at least on this show, for turning the page on Cousins,
Oh
among
yeah,
many, was, and I think you and I talked to a couple guys, smart guys, in February and March that said I don't have any concerns about him bouncing back from the Achilles. And I was like, God, that's maybe I'm off my rocker. That's what I was thinking at the time, but it looks like we're a little bit vindicated.
yeah. I mean, it feels like a weird thing where, like, obviously modern medicine has advanced so much over the years, and there's definitely been instances where your guys bounce back from Achilles injuries. Like, I mean, or just knee injuries have gotten a lot less serious. Like, just in Minnesota sports, like Adrian Peterson looked like an
Yeah.
absolute god the year after his knee injury, and now he bounced back perfectly. But there are still those instances where guys just don't fully get completely right, and I think that anybody that said like they weren't worried about Kirk Cousins, like there's reasons to believe that he was going to be able to bounce back, and
Hmm.
maybe it's not even because of the injury that he's playing this way. Maybe it's just something he's not seeing with the defense. Maybe he's got the yips or something like that. But there's also been instances where you just don't get fully recovered from these injuries. Like Kobe Bryant, he never recovered fully
Hmm.
from his Achilles injury. So I think that there's definitely arguments either way there.
And that was also in his 30s. So I think that
Yeah,
if we stick on this, I think it's the age thing. Like Kevin Durant recovered just fine. And
right.
he was in his 20s. I think that was what, the 2019 postseason or something like
Hmm.
that. So I think you're fine if you're a young man. Once you start to get in that older sportsman category, you might be cooked.
Right.
All right, so the Falcons represent the easiest opponent if they indeed right the ship and the Vikings play there. I will say on the Falcons and another team on this list, they have had an easy schedule and they continue to have an easy schedule. So the whole reason I thought the Falcons would be 9-8, 10-7, win the division is because that schedule was every time during the offseason. There's like 4 or 5 websites that have different criteria for strength of schedule. No matter how you diced it, the Falcons were always right there for easiest schedule. And one other team on this list. All right, who's the next easiest opponents that the Vikings should want to face in the postseason round one?
I might get some pushback for this, but I'm gonna go with the Seattle Seahawks at number 4 here, just for a lot of really similar reasons as the Atlanta Falcons. Like this team, like they have names all over their
Mm-hmm.
roster, like Devon Witherspoon at CB, DK Metcalf wide receiver. They've got the players. They got Kenneth Walker at running back, but at the end of the day, they're just not elite in any category. Like there are definitely multiple different ways that you can beat the Seahawks team, and that's a big reason why they haven't necessarily run away with this struggling NFC West to this point in the season. Like it's again, they got a veteran quarterback who definitely has a tendency to turn the ball over, make some really dumb decisions sometimes in Geno Smith, but they've also had moments where Geno Smith has kind of won them games. And despite the Vikings' history at Lumen Field has been a house of horrors for that team, they haven't won since 2006, I want to say,
Hmm.
in Seattle. So it's obviously been a bad history there, but I think just that combination between Seattle and Atlanta, I think that makes these two teams the most favorable opponents for the Vikings if they were going to go on the road and try to win a playoff game. And maybe the Vikings in a couple weeks can get that 2006 monkey off their back if they go into Seattle and win anyway. So
That was going to be my follow-up was the House of Horrors angle. Is it realistic that the Vikings just beat them at that damn place twice if this is the matchup, or is it going to be a 1-1?
I think it'd probably be a 1-1. Honestly, I'm kind of I picked when we did
Yeah.
the schedule again last week. I picked them to lose at Seattle, and I'm kind of hoping that they do lose at Seattle, just so they're like they aren't just like relaxing going into the playoffs. Like, oh, we've already beat this team a couple weeks ago. We can go and do it again. I'm kind of
Hmm.
hoping that they have that extra billboard material heading into that wild card weekend that they have to go win this one.
Yeah, and that will be we'll be sizing them up in about what, 2 weeks? Probably about 2 weeks from today. I think that's
Yeah, it's
when
week
that game.
16,
Yep.
so yeah,
Hmm.
2 weeks.
And then after that, the Vikings notably have the Packers at home, who they've already beat, and then the Lions, who we're just not quite sure if that game's going to mean anything. I'm guessing that Dan Campbell will play his players no matter what. Maybe it'll determine Coach of the Year, because right now Dan Campbell and Kevin O'Connell and Mike Tomlin are right there in the mix. All right, so Seattle, because they're kind of in the same boat as the Falcons, they're mediocre to good. Sometimes look great in flashes, otherwise not elite at anything. Who's next?
Number three, I'm sticking in the NFC West, and I'm going with the Los Angeles Rams. Obviously, the Vikings lost to the Rams, but I think that there are a couple things that we have to consider when we look at that loss. I mean, first off, it was Thursday night football, so weird shit's going to happen regardless of what's going on. But then the Vikings also didn't have Blake Cashman on the field, who has been one of their best defenders all season. And the Rams were returning Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua to the lineup, two of the better wide receivers in this entire league. And that's just a recipe for disaster for any defense. When you don't have one of your star players and you're going up against two fresh guys who have had time to rest and they're one of the best at their position. So I think that's big reason why the Vikings lost that Thursday night football game. And then just looking more recently, since that loss, the Rams kind of haven't really been playing that great of football. Like they're 6-6 right now. They lost to the Miami Dolphins at home. They squeaked by the New England Patriots, who aren't that great, but making a little bit of noise down the stretch here of the season, playing some spoiler. Then they got blown out by the Philadelphia Eagles, who I think the Vikings are much closer to the Philadelphia Eagles than they are the Los Angeles Rams in terms of talent. And then they squeaked by the New Orleans Saints last week, who just fired their coach and have been an absolute debacle all year. So you look at this Rams team, it's not super inspiring. Matthew Stafford's definitely showing signs of age as well. And it's a decent roster. Obviously, you never want to go up against Sean McVay in a playoff situation. He's always going to be a threat, but I think the Vikings can definitely beat the Los Angeles Rams.
And then you'd have the return game with the mentee angle with Kevin
Yeah,
O'Connell and Sean McVay. And I would think O'Connell can outsmart him probably every other time when they play. We also get to use our item that we just had where could they really beat the Vikings twice in the same building? We'd have the
exactly.
reverse. The Vikings would be due to win there. I want to point out, unrelated to the Vikings, that for years we giggled at the Rams never having a first round pick and trading them away for their Super Bowl push that worked. They finally use them and they have two studs. So it's not that Les Snead or whatever his name is, we're like, yeah, I don't know how to draft. It's that he preferred veterans because right now, in the top five for defensive rookie of the year, Braden Fisk, who's come on really hot in the last 6 games, and then Jared Verse, who is one of the NFL's best edge rushers, let alone rookie. So kudos to the Rams for when they decided to save their picks, they know how to spend them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you coming off a year where Aaron Donald retired, you to pick up some defensive talent in the trenches, and you did a really great job there. So yeah, kudos to the
Yeah.
Rams, and I think any Rams fan would trade those old first round picks for that Super Bowl win. But now
Hmm.
that they're officially kind of entering that rebuild territory, they're doing it really well.
Yeah, they it was cool to see that, we hadn't thought about them drafting since the Jared Goff draft pick, and then they're back after God 8 years, and then
Yeah.
they unless they have sophomore slumps with Fisk and Verse, like they're in a good spot there for knowing how to draft. All right, so we have the Falcons as the easiest, Seattle second easiest, Rams after that. Now we're getting into what you consider the toughest. Who is second or third to last?
I'm going to go with the Vikings' most recent opponent, and that's the Arizona Cardinals. I think you would be hard pressed to find a Vikings fan that would look you dead in the eye, straight face, and say that the Vikings should have won that game on Sunday. The offense was absolutely horrible in the first half, and luckily Sam Darnold was able to pull some heroics, and they were able to go in the locker room at halftime, and Kevin O'Connell was able to scheme stuff up to get them back on track in the second half. But this is an Arizona Cardinals team that I'm taking very seriously. Like, this defense has been absolutely fantastic for about a month now.
Mm-hmm.
It's really starting to come on. And on the offensive side, Kyler Murray's been one of the better quarterbacks in the league. He's bounced back really well from that injury. Marvin Harrison Jr. is starting to come into his own as a star wide receiver. And we saw on Sunday, like, once Stephon Gilmore left that game, like, that Cardinals offense was a little bit it was a little bit tougher to stop that passing offense in Arizona. They've got some really talented pass catchers over there and young ones as well between Harrison, Trey McBride, what's the other? Michael Wilson
Mm-hmm.
is another nice name over there as well. So I think that Arizona is the team that you have to take seriously. And obviously the Vikings won that game, but man, I'm not sure that you're going to be able to hold Arizona to one touchdown and six red zone attempts if you match up again. And if that doesn't happen, is your offense going to be able to score on that defense? This is one of the tougher matchups for the Vikings if they end up having to go into Arizona and try to win a playoff game.
There were some notable social media Vikings themed social media accounts that were lowering the bar on the Cardinals as we were about to play them, that said, hey, these guys aren't very good. And they rank 11th for DVOA, or at least they did
Yeah.
going into last week. And that doesn't happen on accident. So I tried to push back and say, I don't know what you're doing here. These guys don't suck. The defense has gotten good. And then the thing that's always fascinating about Kyler Murray, I'm sure you scouted him 6 years ago, is he can do everything.
Yeah.
Like, he has probably the next to Justin Fields, the fastest quarterback. He's got the arm strength. He's accurate. Like, the mobility, he has everything. And so I think that I predicted, that was my bold take about the NFL, is the Cardinals were going to make the postseason in the 6th or the 7th seed. And I like that they have Jonathan Gannon, former Vikings coach, defensive minded. I always like that split. If you're going to have an established quarterback who can handle the offense on his own, you might as well pair him with a defensive coach. And so I feel that they might get in the dance here, and maybe the Vikings play them, but I think they're set up good for the relative short term, like the next 3 or 4 seasons.
Absolutely. And I mean, for Kyler Murray, it was a really good game for him on Sunday, and it came on a weekend where Call of Duty had double XP. So, I mean, he obviously wasn't playing Call of Duty. He was studying the game tape. So this dude seems locked in.
Before we get to the final one, did you factor in the 49ers on this list or no?
I didn't because you didn't
Okay.
send them to me.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think at the end of the day, I'd put them as the toughest opponent,
Okay.
regardless.
Okay. So
Yeah,
if they get
just
hot, well, if they get hot, that means, my goodness, they won 5 in a row. And then we're
right.
like, oh God, here they're back.
That's
And now,
kind of what I would factor in is the 49ers have to get hot to make the playoffs, win the NFC West. And if they do get hot, look out. They're probably making the NFC Championship game.
yeah. Now, for the record, do you think that they're cooked? They're not going to reach the postseason?
I think this McCaffrey injury might put the final nail in the coffin in terms of the 49ers. Like, obviously Kyle Shanahan can whip stuff up. He's done it with running backs before. He could probably find a way, but I just have a hard time believing at 5-7, Seattle 7-5 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
You have to gain 2 games on them just to have a chance at making the playoffs. And unless Washington collapses down the stretch, you're probably not a wild card team either. And you've got so many other teams ahead of you, like we've already talked about. I think San Francisco's kind of cooked.
Okay. And then for A, do you like Isaac Guerrero in general? And then B, do you like him for fantasy football?
I think he's decent. I think especially playing in San Francisco, like I said, Kyle Shanahan can find a way to make running backs, and he would probably find a way to get me 20 yards as a running back in his offense. So I do think that he can definitely put something together for Garendo. I think he's got decent speed. He finds open lanes as a running game, and he's a decent receiver as well out of the backfield. So I think that especially for fantasy purposes, I think he's going to find a way to get him some points there for you.
Over the last year and a half, at some points in some of our episodes, I've drawn parallels between the Vikings team building and their feel to the San Francisco 49ers, where you have the quarterback whisperer. The offense is usually going to be pretty good no matter who you have at quarterback. The defense is good. So and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah came from the 49ers.
Yeah,
That's where he was reared as an executive. The one thing that holds me back from that take is the Vikings can't
running
just throw in
backs.
a running back and
Yep.
then I would love to be in that spot where it's like, hey, we got Ty Chandler and Dwayne McBride and Xavier Scott. That's fine. 49ers could make that work. But with the Vikings, we have to try to get Aaron Jones, try to get him to stop fumbling. And then we're already looking ahead to figure out who we can draft at running back. So we haven't quite solved that conundrum. All right. The last thing, what I'm going to do is ask you for your Tampa Bay Buccaneers speech because they de facto are at the top of your list for the team the Vikings shouldn't want to play. Why is that?
I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a very scary team going into the playoffs because I don't think anybody's taking them seriously right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're a 6-6 team. They're not even technically leading the division because Atlanta holds the tiebreakers over them, so they have to have a couple things break their way to even make it into the dance. But I think that this is a team that is much better than their 6-6 record suggests. Partially because they've played an absolute gauntlet of a schedule that has included a Week 1 matchup against the Washington Commanders. They played the Detroit Lions. They played the Philadelphia Eagles. They played the Baltimore Ravens, and they played the Kansas City Chiefs. And some of those
Wow.
games came without wide receiver Mike Evans in the lineup too, and they
Mm-hmm.
found a way to make pretty much all of them be one possession games if they didn't outright win them. So I think that this is a team that has gone through a gauntlet of a schedule. They have Mike Evans back in the lineup. Baker Mayfield, say what you will about him as an elite quarterback, but he finds a way to win games, damn it. And I think this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team is going to be able to find a way to put some games together down the stretch. They have a really good running back room, averaging 5.1 yards per carry this season. Obviously, the Vikings have a elite run defense. So those two teams, those two units would be going head to head in that matchup. And whoever performs better on that Sunday is going to be the one that probably wins that game. But I think that Tampa Bay they have the most ways that they can beat the Vikings heading into the playoffs. And that's why I would put them as among this 5 teams, the scariest opponent to face come wild card weekend.
And the Vikings defense, rush defense, notably got a chin check against the Cardinals. It
Yeah.
wasn't their usual standard of living. It's not that they got totally carved up. I mean, they won for God's sake, but they ran the ball more effectively than I've seen against this Vikings in quite some time. So, for the record, do you believe the Buccaneers will overtake the Falcons and win the NFC South?
That at this point would be my prediction. Yeah, I think this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team is better than Atlanta. Obviously, they have to have things break their way, but I definitely see Atlanta losing at least 1 or 2 more games down the stretch of the season. So I think
Mm-hmm.
Tampa Bay definitely has a path, and I think that they'll do it.
Well, they're gonna lose this Sunday, damn it.
Yeah.
And then who as a prediction, which number do the Vikings draw, or which team will they play in round one?
Oh man, this is tough. Well, I mean, we might have our answer in like 20 to 36 hours or something because the Lions are playing the Packers on Thursday Night Football. So I think that ultimately my prediction would be that the Lions win Thursday night. That would
Mm-hmm.
give the Vikings a 2-game advantage, assuming that they win on Sunday. So I think they end up as a 5 seed. They'll play the Buccaneers.
Okay, so exactly what we
Yeah.
don't want to happen is
Yeah,
going to happen. I see
exactly.
what you did there.
Yeah.
You have progressed well as a Vikings fan if you're going to have that
Yeah.
type of cynicism. All right, who is the NFL League MVP? Who's going to win it?
This is I think it should be Josh Allen.
Yeah.
I don't know why this is such a debate because coming into the year, this was supposed to be a year where the Buffalo Bills are resetting and going
Mm-hmm.
like 10-7, 9-8, not really being a super convincing team. They're 10-2. Josh Allen is playing some of the best football he's ever played, and this team is gelling, and they're on their way to potentially being the absolute top seed in the AFC right now. I mean, I get it. Saquon Barkley's had a great year. I get it. Lamar Jackson's had a great year, but Josh Allen has been the most valuable player in the NFL this season.
Yeah, I think it's only a debate, and I would vote for Josh Allen too. I think it's only a debate because Lamar Jackson's stat line is just like Aaron Rodgers from his prime. What is it,
Yeah.
like 28 touchdowns, 3 picks? And if you subtracted Lamar from that roster, I think they
It
would
definitely
plummet to
goes
the
down.
depths of hell. But the same thing can probably be said about Josh Allen, going to, do they still have Trubisky or who's their backup?
I think it is Trubisky. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the ultimate
So
diet
it's
Josh Allen.
yeah, it's not going to go too well there either. And I mean, at the end of the day, the Baltimore Ravens also have Derrick Henry, who is leading
Yeah.
the league in every single rushing category. So how bad would it actually be in
Yeah.
Baltimore if they didn't have Lamar Jackson? Like obviously Lamar's awesome. I'm not trying to
Hmm.
take away from him, but I just think the MVP, it shouldn't be this difficult to decide that
Yeah.
Josh Allen is the
And it's
MVP
his
at this point.
turn too. If you
Yeah.
it's like kind of like in the NBA, it feels like every guy gets a turn, whether it's
Hmm.
a championship, the NBA. This one feels like Josh Allen's turn. And then um do you have a Super Bowl that's different than Chiefs Lions prediction?
I picked before the season. I picked Chiefs Packers.
Mm-hmm.
But I
That's
just
better
can't
than
go.
mine.
Yeah, I just can't go Chiefs against Chiefs Lions at this point. I think Detroit, despite some of their injuries on the defensive side of the ball, I think they've been an absolute juggernaut in the NFC. And until I'm proven otherwise, I think that it's going to be Chiefs Lions.
Yeah, I think too that last year, I don't know if you were one of them, but like Jeff Diamond, who writes for Vikings Territory, and myself, we didn't repeatedly pick against the Chiefs. We just expected because they were so mid by their standards in the regular season that they were gonna pay the piper. And I
Mhm.
don't think in good faith we can make that mistake again, no matter what we see in the regular season, because they'll probably just turn on the Jets. However, I do want to advance this theory again that I told Yannick Eckhart last weekend is the Chiefs have been getting away with it so much like that that was mind-boggling on Black Friday.
Oh God, yeah.
Um, it really wouldn't surprise me, generally speaking, if they match up in the divisional round against the Bills or the Ravens and they just get their teeth kicked in. Like they jump on them like 34 nothing and it makes Chiefs, the organization, fans go like, "Okay, we need to reset this dynasty and, go win it next year." Like I
Mhm.
can see that happening. Now, if it's only 17 nothing, 21 nothing lead, no, that will just be Mahomes is like, all right, now we can start playing. But I can see a world where they carry over this, whatever you want to call this, like the way that they're winning into the postseason, and then a really good team just says, like, you're not going to pull that shit here.
Yeah, I could absolutely see it too. I think the only real thing is just like this team's 11-1. They just
Hmm.
cannot lose football games at this point, it seems like. And you got Patrick Mahomes on that side. Andy Reid's still one of the best play callers in the entire
Hmm.
league too. So I think the one difference between this year and last year is the offensive line definitely has been a lot worse this season.
Hmm.
So I think going up against teams like Baltimore, Buffalo, that would scare you a little bit if you're a Chiefs fan, but Patrick Mahomes, he makes magic happen every year. So, like I said, until proven otherwise, I'm just not going to vote against him.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. Even though I'll
Yeah.
be tempted to talk myself into it. It's
Oh,
worth
me
noting.
too.
It's
Yeah.
worth noting the Bills haven't been to the AFC Championship since 2020. When we think about the AFC playoffs, there's this temptation to think, "Hey, the Bills get there every year and they don't quite make it." No, they haven't been to the AFC
Yeah.
Championship since Diggs' first year there. All right, I have the Vikings 31-24 over the Falcons. I know you picked the Cardinals last week. You were this close. What do you got this week?
I'm going to pick the Vikings to beat Kirk Cousins in his return to US Bank. I'm going to go 28 to 17.
Okay, and then do fans legitimately boo them? Like, you can hear it on TV.
I think it'll be a mixed bag, but yeah, there'll be some booze mixed in there.
All right, when we're back here in the saddle 1 week from today, we'll be at Bears week again and previewing Monday Night Football. All right, sir.
Can't wait. Yeah, sounds great.
All right, take it easy.
See you then.
Later.